Right, so I'm making a video basically to discuss why video games are potentially becoming unfun. Now, there's a number of reasons. I'm going to go through them. But first off, I kind of want to talk about, I've got a couple pages of notes here. First thing I want to talk about is what a game is, basically. What makes an actual game, what I think makes an actual game. And sort of what my definition of a game is, and why that's going to give me the ability to formulate some of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So first off, I had a look at some definitions online, just quick Google search, a couple of different websites as to what a game actually is. And basically the simplest, best definition of what I could find was the first line of the Wikipedia article, which basically means, or says, I should say, is a game is a structured form of play. And this is I'm going to get into what separates the difference between a game and an experience or a simulator, because they're not necessarily the same thing. Some of the definitions I saw for a game said something like something you partake in as a form of enjoyment. Well, that's not necessarily true, because you can partake in a movie. You can watch a movie, and you wouldn't say you were playing a game while watching a movie, even though you're interacting or making some effort to enjoy the movie. You wouldn't say you're playing a game, and you load up with your favorite movie. That's not really true. And a simulator, while it can be a game, isn't necessarily a game. You wouldn't consider a physics simulator that someone uses in their work to necessarily be a game, even though you could potentially use it as such. So just keep that in mind. And some of my opinions on what truly make a game, whether it's a sport or a video game, I've got 4 things that I've written down here. Number 1, to really make a game, first thing, there should be a set of rules or expectations within the game. You need some boundaries as to what defines how you navigate through the game. And if you don't have these boundaries, well, then it just kind of becomes an arbitrary situation where you don't really know what's going on. And if the rules can change at whim, then it's not really a game. It's almost just sort of messing around. In order to have a game, you have to be able to play it. And if you don't know what the rules or the expectations are, how can you really play the game? The second part I've got here is that there should be some element of challenge involved. This is what takes away a movie from being a game, really, is there's no challenge involved in watching a movie. There should be some input from the user that requires some element of skill or decision making. There should also be a measurable level of outcome while playing the game. Now, you could possibly come up with some places or some games which don't adhere to this, but I think there should be a measurable level of outcome, whether there's a win or a lose, whether there's a score that happens from the game, or whether there's some completion. You finish the game, you beat the final boss. That would be a win situation, but you achieve something. There's an end goal that is reached, and that if there are multiple participants in the game, that they should be of equal footing when the game starts. Now, what I mean by that is not that the participants are all on the same level, but that they should be on equal footing. So, if you started a game and you've got no weapons, no ammo, nothing to defend yourself with, and the opposition has a fully loaded arsenal, that's not really a game at that point. That's kind of just a slaughter. But you could, again, this one is a little bit, you could argue on this one, you could say, you know, if one team is meant to be the hunter and the other team is meant to be the hunted, right? But that comes down to the mechanics of the game. But in terms of a competitive game, people should be on equal footing. You shouldn't be able to have outside influences, you know, affecting the game, right? You shouldn't be able to swipe your credit card and pay money to gain an advantage over someone, because at that point it's not really a game. It's just, you know, a power simulator. But we'll come onto that a little bit more. There's a few more bits I want to talk to. I'm going to go back to my first bit of my page. So, you know, many video games aren't fun nowadays, and a lot of the big ones, you're not really having fun. You're sort of being tricked into it. And I'll really expand on this later. But you know, one of the first things is that the trope of things were better back in the day. So you're gonna hear this from a lot of older people who have said, you know, things were better back in my day, or whatever. But it really could be the case that it's a psychological effect that is tricking you into believing that games were better back in the day. And I'm just going to elaborate this. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just going to elaborate on my thoughts on this. Is that back in the day, when you were first getting into video games, when you were first doing anything really, you had a lot less experience. The novelty has now worn off. Now that you've been playing video games for how long you've been playing them, in my case, 25 plus years of playing video games, you know, since I was a kid, the novelty has worn off in a lot of things. Things that were new and exciting are now commonplace and expected. And because of this, you know, you don't get the same mental stimulation from the games, because you're not thinking about them in the same way. And it's very difficult to go back and think about something the way it was the first time you experienced it. You can see that in a lot of TV shows and stuff like that. The first time you watch something, it can just be so amazing. And the second time you go back and watch it, and then suddenly you're picking it apart. You go, oh, I never noticed that. Oh, that wasn't so good. But the experience has changed. So now it was a case of you experienced the games in a different way, and it was better to you back in the day because you didn't have the relationship building between other games that you do have now. So there is a strong case for it was better back in my day, just like people who you might be watching this and saying, you know what, well, everyone says that. In 15, 20 years time, think back and think, you know, were you having more fun now than you will be having in the future, you know, or you did in the past? So you're going to have to think about that one. And also, again, the more 10 out of 10 games, the more 9 out of 9, 9 out of 10, the more 8 out of 10 games you play, the less special they become. So, you know, you play a 10 out of 10 FPS game, that's going to be your benchmark for what a really good game is. It's very hard to drop back, especially with the access you have to these games. If you play a 10 out of 10 game and you drop back to an 8 out of 10, you're just going to feel that it's not as good, and you might go back to playing that 10 out of 10. You could go long stretches of time, long periods of only playing really good games. And, you know, if you only play really good games all the time, when you play not so good games, you know, it's going to stick out and it's going to hurt. You know, if all you've ever played is an 8 out of 10 game, you know, if there was some objective standard of measuring games, if all you'd ever played was 8 out of 10s, well, psychologically, that's your 10 out of 10, and you can play better games because that's what's available. But if all you've ever done is play 10s, if all you've ever done is play mainstream games that, you know, with high level polish, then if you get something that's not in those same realms, that it's going to feel worse. It's going to start to become unfun. And also, leading on to this, back in the day, you did get the game that you paid for the most part. When you bought a game, that was it. Now maybe there was Game of the Year editions and stuff like that, thinking back into the early 2000s, when gaming started to really take off and started to go mainstream, you would get Game of the Year editions and stuff like that. But for the most part, you bought the game and you got it, and that was it. You weren't thinking about buying DLC in the future. You weren't thinking about, your expectations were not to the future. It's like, what else am I going to get out of this game in the future? Your expectations were, what am I going to get out of this game now? Like, am I going to buy this game now and have fun with it, or am I not? Am I going to get DLC now? Is your thing is, well, I'm going to buy this game in the future. Am I going to get DLC? Well, we don't know. We don't know if we're going to get DLC. We don't know if the DLC is going to be any good. We don't know if the game's going to come out and have flaws and need to be patched. Now, these are all things that we didn't have to think about. We didn't used to think about. And, games stood on their own merits, not whether or not they were going to be updated in the future. Games are now intentionally released in unfinished states with the promise of them being updated and patched in the future. The idea of games as a live service where they want to release less games but update them more often to try and keep a player base. Now, whether or not this is a good or a bad thing, could be looked upon differently, but I think there are a lot less mainstream games that are standout now because of it, because the games just get continuously updated, and they actually get updated so much sometimes that you kind of forget about what's going on, and then it kind of loses all meaning at that point. If you miss a game for a couple months and you come back and the game's completely changed, are you playing the same game? Are you not playing the same game? Was it actually any good? It's hard to tell. And many games also have content locked behind paywalls now. And I'm not just talking about microtransactions or pay to win, but some elements of some games are locked behind paywalls. You have games that are released with a standard edition, which is the base game, and maybe a couple of extras. You have deluxe editions, you have collector's editions, you have complete editions, you have all Game of the Year editions. You have some games that release with 3 or 4 editions before the game is even out. They are locking the content of the game behind more money. So if you can't afford to spend full price on the game, their full price, I'm not talking about full price. What full price is for a game is going to be different for everyone. But if you can't afford to spend the full price, if the complete edition is £90, $90, €90, and the base edition is like 60, you've got to pay 50% more to get the extra content that's already within the game. You got to remember that content has already been created. They're just locking it, right? This isn't content that's come out after the game has been released. This isn't DLC. This is content that's been created, digital content. Remember this. It's not physical content. It's not digital. It's all downloads for the sake of discussion. The inclusion of it within another version, it is free. Other than the dev time, obviously, that costs to make it. But now the product has been made, so there is now just the distribution cost of a digital product, which is negligible at this point when you're doing these things. But it's locked behind that content. You're not getting the game you paid for or the game that exists. You're getting whatever version they want to sell to you at whatever price, and often it's significantly hampered in such a way that they're trying to get more money out of you. They're trying to get more money out of all of us, and they're incentivizing you to try and spend more money on something that's already made. And now that the games are being your fun is being tied to the amount of money that you're spending on the game, which isn't fun. If you have to think about money while you're playing a game, if you buy the base edition of a game, and all for what it's worth, all you're getting is the single player and the multiplayer experience, right? You're not getting the extra cool unlocks, the skins, the XP boosts, you're missing out on stuff. And they're trying to capitalize on this. And the idea that, you're going to spend more money to not miss out. Is that fun? Yeah, I mean, the answer to that is probably not when you think about it. And the problem is it requires thinking about it, which a lot of people, don't have time or aren't interested in doing, because why would you want to think about something that isn't fun? We play games to try and have fun, right? People play sports, people play games, people read books, people do their hobbies and engage in stuff to have fun. And all of a sudden, when you tie money to it and you have to think about how much value am I getting out of this, that's not fun. That's maths. That's taking your immersion out of the video game, simulation, right? It's not fun anymore. When you used to be able to buy, a game, for 40 units of currency, dollars, euros, pounds, whatever, you used to be able to 40, and that was what you were going to get. You didn't have to worry about it in the future. And now when you buy a game, it can be considered that you need to have a conscious effort of what's coming in the future to see if that game is going to give you your value, because otherwise your money might be better spent elsewhere on something that you might enjoy. And one of the reasons this is happening is because gaming has gone mainstream. So content and monetization ideas have gone mainstream too. This is probably another frustrating part of gaming, is now you have to consider the company you're buying the game from. Now, arguably, you should do this for all products in your life, but at some point it becomes fatiguing. And, if you buy hundreds of products a year, whether it's food, clothes, video games, cars, where you get your fuel from, what supermarket you go to, if you have to do extensive background research onto every single product you buy, it's just not feasible. And even if it is feasible, you just be exhausted by the end of it. And then, at some point you have to draw your moral line and say, this is where I'm willing to spend my money. This is where I'm not willing to spend my money. And again, when it comes to video games, that's not fun, right? It's not fun to have to look at a game and, decide where your moral compass with it lies. Whether it's to do with with political correctness, whether it's to do with the themes of the games, whether it's to do with politics, whether it's to do with your worldviews, whether it's to do with, forced concepts being added into the game as afterthoughts in order to entertain some ideals or some beliefs, whether you believe in them or not, that's not fun. It's stuff that's being forced into the game. If you are playing a game and something stands out, then arguably it's not good. Because if something stands out, then you realize you're in a video game. And for a lot of games, you're trying to build an immersive simulator into what's going on. And if you break the immersion, if you sit down and play and you think and you look at something and you go, wow, the devs really added that. As soon as you start thinking outside the game and not within the context of the game, it's potentially a forced concept that has detracted from the experience. Whatever those forced concepts are, whether you agree with them or not, they exist, and there's been a lot of uproar in certain games and some games about things that have been added as afterthoughts, stories, characters, arcs, decisions being made that, were they necessary or were they just done as a call out to certain things? It's sad to see that this stuff is being put into games, not because it's the right thing to do, but because the massive studios that are making a lot of these games are doing this for the sake of political correctness, for the sake of clout, and not to enhance the experience of the player, which is what games should be about. They are a form of entertainment, and they are detracting from the entertainment of the game by putting these things in there when they don't need to be. They don't need to be called out. They don't even need to be addressed one way or another. Whatever your reviews on them is, they don't need to be addressed one way or another if they don't add to the story. If they don't add to the gameplay, why bring it up at all? It's sort of like certain graphic scenes in movies. Sometimes it feels like they just get put there. Why add that into the story if it doesn't make it more interesting? And so, just to move on to that, move on from that point, AAA games, these big studios, which are forced or believe they are forced to do these sort of things, they're like giant boats. They're like giant ships that they're not very agile. They can't turn. Once they've set sail in a direction, they can't do a U-turn, they can't do a 90-degree turn, they can barely sort of move in one direction or another, and it takes a long time. And it's understandable it takes a long time. If you've got a company of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 employees, right, it takes a lot longer to get messages to filter down and through and directions to change than it does if you're a small team of 3 people where you can decide, to figure out what's going on within a day, communicate, and then make the changes. So that's part of the problem. Is AAA games can't adapt fast enough to maintain their fun and to maintain what's right for players, because they set off in the direction of profits, and sometimes profits and fun coincide and sometimes they don't. Whereas an indie game studio, they can set off in whatever direction they like and adjust on the fly, and can often hit the best of both worlds. So indie dev studios can be way more agile and go into a better direction than a AAA game on the turn of a dime, and that's basically one of the reasons why you can have such hit indie games that come out of nowhere, where all of a sudden, they're these big games built by they're small games, but they end up becoming big games built by small teams because they can focus on the fun and they don't have to hit all the corporate and political check boxes in order to get through and break into the mainstream, whereas large studios, large developers have to have these checkboxes in place, because otherwise they're going to come under scrutiny. And if you work for a large corporation or anything with a huge amount of brand on it, they would rather not deal with it at all rather than have to justify it. They would rather not make press statements. They would rather not talk about their decisions. They would rather just get on with it, because for them that saves a huge amount of cost. You don't have to deal with PR statements. You don't have to deal with the stress and thoughts of whether your stuff's going to get canceled and trend one way or another on social media, whereas an indie dev studio can remain relatively quiet about what they're doing and just get on with it, right? It's a lot different when you're developing a game from the ground up than when you're trying to make the decision for your next Call of Duty franchise game, or whatever other triple A game is, think is gonna come out, right? There's a lot less decisions like that need to be made, which takes away from some of the spontaneity and some of the the creativeness that can be implemented into a game, which is essentially a work of art. You also have a sort of sunk cost fallacy in many games, where you have players who have put time, money, emotion into a game, a series, a franchise, a company, and they've been let down, and that can hurt, and that can really kill your enjoyment of a game, a series, or a franchise. The biggest example of this is if you know anything about games, is going to be Blizzard Entertainment. They have basically destroyed their fan base. Not their core fan base, but their fan base, but their larger fan base. So, you think of anything, it's got a hardcore fan base of a company that large, and then there'll be like a broader fan base. That broader fan base has been destroyed and torn down through some of the things that happened in the last few years, and some of the things that have come to light. And as a result, if my phone doesn't stop beeping, I'm gonna go fuck. So Blizzard really has done this damage to their broader player base of fans, and I would probably say I used to be a core Blizzard fan. I remember back when I used to play Diablo 2, and the original Diablo, even though I don't feel like I ever really did much in the original Diablo, but I used to play the original Diablo 2, the Diablo 2 Lords of Destruction expansion pack, and I brought that up with me. When I sort of got control of my own money, I went out and got StarCraft 2 the day it came out. I'd never played StarCraft 1, didn't know anything. I just knew it was a Blizzard game. I went and bought it. Diablo 3, I bought that the day it came out. I started playing World of Warcraft. It was a Blizzard game. I put all this time and this money and this effort into this company, into this series, and then, I wouldn't say I particularly, I never played Heroes of the Storm, wasn't particularly interested in it, and some of their stuff, so maybe I was growing apart from it and just wasn't blindly following it so much. But the things Blizzard started doing, some of their public statements and reactions to certain situations were just, completely against what I thought was the right thing to do, and just showed that they did not care about the player base. They don't really. I'm talking about the corporation as an entity and not as a collection of individuals, if that makes sense. There are obviously individuals within the company that want to do a good job, but the entity moves in one direction and is the true face, and that's the only way you can judge a company. Really, you shouldn't judge a company based on the merits of a few individuals within the company. You should judge the company as a whole, in my opinion, because it's those few individuals, those people you don't know who are working really hard within the company, are still working in the direction of the entity at the end of the day. And whether or not they are good people for working with Blizzard, despite Blizzard or not, that's a moral decision that you need to make. But at the end of the day, I grew apart from it, and I spent a lot of time playing World of Warcraft and Blizzard games, and now I don't even want to pick them up. So, between the political correctness and the sunk cost fallacy, some people won't make that decision. Some people will keep playing Blizzard games potentially unaware of what's going on, and I'm not saying it's just Blizzard, there's other companies where this happens as well. but potentially unaware of the issues, which, I don't believe you can be necessarily guilty of funding something that isn't good if you're if you're unaware of it. If that makes sense, if you go out to the shop and you buy something, and you're completely unaware that the shop you're buying it from supports, child labor, or, just as a fairly extreme example with some of the tech companies, if you don't know that, you can't necessarily be guilty of condoning it. It's only once you are aware of what's going on, is whether or not you can make a decision on whether you care or whether that decision has to be made. But again, if you have to make that decision, it goes against the core idea of games being fun. If you've got to, again, if you have to think and sit, do I want to play this game because of the actions of the company? That's not fun. And back in the day, you didn't have to do that. Before the advent of social media, now you can argue if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but before that advent of social media and the behemoth that it's become, are games better for being aware of what people are doing, what companies are doing, what goes on behind the scenes? Are games better for it? That's a decision you have to make, and something you have to come to on your own. Are they better? Is not necessarily the same as are they more fun. And that's also another decision you have to make. A game can be technically better. It can be mechanically better, but it might not be as fun, depending on some of the other aspects that go into it. Moving slightly away from a bit of the heavy topics, though we will be coming back to them shortly, is one of the reasons why we're not having fun with games as much anymore is we consume too much gaming content, too many videos, too many streams. We're playing too many games, if you can believe it. I know I certainly am. I have way too many games on my Steam library that are both played and unplayed. I probably have over 200 games on my Steam library that I've never even really looked at. Thanks, Humble Bundle. But I also have games where I've put 10 minutes into them. I maybe say I have 60 or 70 games where I've knocked at least 10, 20 hours into them, and a few that are into a couple hundreds of hours. And that's just my Steam games, right? That's not including World of Warcraft or RuneScape or any of the other MMOs I've played for varying lengths of time. But it's a lot of content. Watching gaming videos every day, watching live streams, watching other people play games. It's a lot of gaming content, and too much of a good thing, right? If you consume gaming content every day, you're just going to be constantly thinking and engaging with gaming content. You're not going to give your brain the sort of rest that it needs, in between dopamine hits, basically. If you don't give your brain that rest, how are you going to enjoy things? You're just going to get used to it, and it's kind of going to become a habit rather than a hobby. And as soon as it becomes a habit, it's not as fun, right? You can have fun going out and indulging every once in a while, but as soon as it becomes a habit, something that you do on the regular because you do it, then it loses a lot of charm, it loses a lot of appeal, and suddenly it can go from being a positive life-enhancing thing to a negative thing that is causing more harm than benefit. And speaking of this, speaking of benefit, and causing harm, we're probably not playing with friends as much anymore, especially if you're getting older, if you're getting into your late 20s, 30s, as I am, and a lot of the older gaming community is now, people who've been playing since the early 2000s, and we're really sort of right in the middle of the up and coming of the games. Games 10 years ago were really the start of a sort of change into the era we saw now. If you didn't play games from the late 90s to early 2000s, you probably missed a lot of the building blocks of what's gone on in the gaming industry, which I'll touch on shortly. And because you're getting older, the people that you would normally socialize with, friends from ex-friends or ex-friends from school or college or university, potentially your job, people have less time, potentially not for video games, but less time to play with other people. When you were in school, or if you are in school now, you might go to school from 9 till 3, 9 till 4, 8 till 3, 8 till 2, whatever your school hours are on, right? Morning to afternoon. And then you go home, you do a bit of homework, maybe not, probably not, let's be honest. You have dinner, and then you've got you and all the friends and all the people you socialize with on a daily basis, generally have a few hours in the evening where you are ready to do the same thing at the same time, right? So you get that strong social aspect. Now, if you're getting older, you get more responsibilities. The people you used to play with get more responsibilities. You're not spending time with each other during the day. You might, if you're not, you don't work with each other. Your friend's working at X job, you're working at Y job, someone else has gone and moved thing. You haven't got that personal interaction where, everybody at school is playing Call of Duty, or everyone at school is playing Fortnite, so we play Fortnite, or everyone is playing FIFA, so we play FIFA. You haven't got that personal connection through others into the game. And because you haven't got that, it's very easy to fizzle out. So some games that maybe deserve more time, you could say they deserve more time, but definitely multiplayer games, which are always going to work better when you play with friends, right? I don't think there's any situation where you can play a multiplayer game without friends and for it to be a better experience, right? Whether it's an MMO, whether it's an FPS, whether it's a strategy game, battle royale, whatever, it's almost certainly going to be better with friends. And I know some of the best times I had playing games were, when we would get home from school or work, or it would be summertime, and we would go and play video games pretty much together. Whether it was in, were we using Discord at the time? I can't remember if it was Discord, but whether it was Discord or not, or Ventrilo, or TeamSpeak, or Mumble, or Skype, whatever it was, we'd go on and we'd be in a call for several hours, and even if we weren't doing necessarily the same thing at the same time, we were doing whatever we were doing together. And because of that, it was just more fun. You could share your thoughts and your feelings with other people, and you could enjoy what you were doing, even if you weren't, even if it wasn't with other people, if that makes sense. And sorry, one thing I've just forgot is regarding to consuming too much gaming content, is we often don't play games anymore, or I know I certainly don't. I very occasionally do, but most of the time I have a game and a video, a game and a stream, a game and a conversation going on in the background, and it's not about the game. And suddenly the experience of the game becomes distorted because I'm not watching the game and what's going on and interacting with it. I'm sort of paying attention to the game, sort of paying attention to the stream, sort of paying attention to the video I'm watching, sort of doing something else, having a distraction on the time, and it definitely alters the experience. Try watching a video and having a conversation with someone at the same time. You're only going to pick up half of one of the things you're going on, and it's going to alter it. Whether or not you miss something the person's saying, whose conversation you're having with, whether or not you miss something that's in the video and you end up having to skip back, right? Go and pop a video up. I pop videos up on my second monitor all the time, and then sometimes I'll go away, I'll start reading an article while I'm watching the video, and 5-10 minutes of the video will play, and I'll just snap back and realize I've got this video playing and I don't even know what's going on. Now, if I'm doing that when I'm playing a game, is my attention on the video? Is my attention on the game? Is it split? I'm not getting the full experience of the game, and you might not have a multi-monitor setup. You might not be, I don't want to, you could say lucky enough, fortunate enough to have a multi-monitor setup, but you've almost certainly got either a TV, a console if you're watching this video, or you've got a phone, or you've got a computer. But you certainly probably have a phone, and you've probably got either a gaming console or a gaming PC. And you could easily be having a game on with something on your phone, or if you have this PC set up, you could have something on your second monitor or on your laptop or something like that, right? You could be consuming multiple versions of media at the same time, overstimulating your brain, arguably, and not getting the focus of the experience. And if you do that, it's going to take down the experience of whatever you're trying to consume. So we have to try and, in order to have more fun, we have to do less. We have to make it more simple, is where I'm trying to go with that one. Now back onto the topic of, a little bit away from the psychology of it, back onto the topics of games, back on towards AAA studios and what they are or aren't doing for the industry. You have AAA game studios that are set out for profits, and profits exclusively, if not 90% of what they're doing. They can't afford to make mistakes. Making mistakes on a $500 million budget is just going to get things canceled, and everyone likes job security, so they want to do the best they can. AAA games are built on yearly releases and micro improvements rather than game defining, genre defining, era defining attempts of making video games. All you have to do is look at what's gone on in the past, what's going on in the present, to see that this is basically the case. And this is one of the reasons why indie games can be so successful, is because they can take those risks with potentially less punishment, less of a downfall. If you haven't climbed so many steps, you don't fall as far, sort of thing. Look at FIFA, look at Call of Duty, look at Assassin's Creed, look at the Battle Royales. They're all the same game with small improvements and small iterations. So you're playing the same game with another version number tacked at the end. There is functionally no difference between the Call of Duty games pretty much since Call of Duty 4. Functionally, there's almost no difference. You could say probably the biggest two things that have been added to Call of Duty games since 2007 are zombies, the zombies modes, and the battle royale modes. That's the only two significant changes I think that they've really made that I can think of. And we'll touch a little bit more on that in a second. Is that these studios, they don't want to make genre-defining games. They're not out to make the next smash hit. They're just trying to make money, and they're trying to make money by doing what's already proven to work. And because they're trying to make money, what's already proven to work, they're just going to release basically the same game every year. And too much of a good thing. You play the same game for too long, and suddenly it's boring. It's not fun anymore. I think that's why there's a lot of mainstream gamers, and I use the term gamers loosely, but there's a lot of people who play, a lot of mainstream gamers who just play Call of Duty, and they play it for a few hours, maybe a couple of hours a day when they get home from work, and then that's it, and then they put it down, and then they go do other stuff, and they just buy the new Call of Duty. They might buy a console and only play FIFA and Call of Duty, and maybe a racing game. They might buy a console, and for its entire life, they only buy the yearly Call of Duty, FIFA releases, and a racing game. And there's a lot of people like that out there they're not buying games to experience the full system. They're buying it for what they like, and then because they don't spend 40 hours a week playing video games, in addition to their job or whatever their lifestyle is, they're not having to deviate from that, right? And game companies know this, and they target these people, and that's why if you look at these yearly release games, they're now packed with microtransactions, because they know that these people aren't buying all the extra games that they're potentially putting out. So how do you get more money out of these people? Well, you give them the ability to spend money when they're in their game. You give them the ability to buy FIFA packs. You give them the ability to buy loot boxes for skins and cosmetics, to buy, if we're talking about racing games, to buy extra and upgraded cars and stuff like that. And that's how these gaming companies are making money out of these people who aren't really, these people who were never used, who weren't spenders, They weren't spenders, and they've become spenders, right? They've become spenders because the game companies have wanted them to become spenders, and they found a way to get them to do it. And this hurts people who play lots of games. If you play tons of different games and suddenly your games have gone from games into microtransaction shops, why would you're not going to enjoy that. That's not your game. If you spend 300 on games in a year, and you buy 3 games and 180 worth of microtransactions, right? You know, what's the difference between that and buying, what was that example? That game was $40 each. What's that between buying 7 or 8 games, right? If you are a variety gamer, you're punished for being a variety gamer, because in order to experience the full out of a game nowadays is you have to spend extra money in microtransactions, which costs more money. And again, as I said earlier, if you're thinking about money, you're not having fun, because thinking about money, it generally isn't fun, right? Unless you do finances for fun. In my opinion, that's the case. You also have, if you create a retrospective of all the 10 out of 10 games that have come in the past, I'd make a small list of these games somewhere, I think. But if you think about all the games that were 10 out of 10 genre-defining games in the past, just as sort of support to my argument here, things like Doom and FIFA and Call of Duty and stuff like that, right? These games that were, think about the games that when they first came out, they were they were just smash hits. They just did it differently than everyone else. Doom, as I said, Call of Duty 4, right? That was when, Call of Duty 4 is when Call of Duty took off, right? That's when Call of Duty, essentially took the world by storm. All right, some people might say Modern Warfare 2. I think it's younger people will say Modern Warfare 2. If you're a few years older, you probably picked up Call of Duty during COD 4, and you say that's where it started. That's where it came from. Not to say that obviously the earlier Call of Duties were impactful, but Call of Duty 4 was the real turning point in that case. But all the clones that come out of this, I'm not so sure that Battlefield is necessarily a clone of Call of Duty. I'm going to be honest, I don't know that much about Battlefield, but I think Battlefield definitely succeeded on the back of Call of Duty rather than it being the other way around. At least that's the way I understand it, the way I see it. Someone might tell me I'm wrong. These sort of first-person military shooters and all the other ones that came after it, right? If you were to Google military shooter, right, and see how many of them resemble Call of Duty stuff like Call of Duty 4, That's what you're going to get, right? Is they're going to be clones. They're going to be copies of success. Copies of success are almost never as good as the original. Now, again, just to add on to this a little bit, I'd say probably another problem is these games that have made these games that have made these games, these studios that have made these games, these tens, are now very frequently getting bought up by major developers, major publishers, major studios. They're being absorbed into larger companies, which then change the way they operate. These powerhouses, studios, they just, you can throw enough money. Everyone has a price, right? You can throw enough money at any studio you want in the world, and eventually you'd be stupid to say no. Big example is Minecraft and the original creator Notch, right? I would imagine his intention was probably never to sell, but when Microsoft came along with the dollar signs, eventually that number goes high enough, and you have to say, okay, because money talks. It really does, and that's all these large corporations are interested in. And if they view something that can make them more money, then they're gonna go after it. It's not about preserving. They're not about preserving the integrity of the game and preserving the fun. They're looking at it as an investment. And as I said, if you're thinking about money, you're not thinking about fun. The two, they can walk in the same direction, but they don't go hand in hand. That's all I'm saying. They're free to split apart at any single point. They can go down the same path, but they don't have to. And often when money gets involved, fun becomes the second thing on the list at the end of the day. And speaking about money and fun, you have the real advent of mobile games in the last 10 years. I want to say 8 years definitely, but probably 10 years. Mobile games have, for the worse, objectively for the worse, destroyed a large part of how games are going to be developed in the future. Going back to my definition of a game in the beginning of this video, where I said games should have some element of challenge, there should be a measurable level of outcome, and participants should be basically on equal footing. In my opinion, mobile games have basically none of these. In fact, they operate in a way specifically to avoid this. There is no element of challenge involved in a pay-to-win mobile game. No serious element, I should say. In these pay-to-win mobile games, the more money you spend, the more powerful you become. Because of this, it is better to be rich than skillful. And therefore, a skillful player cannot beat a rich player unless the skillful player is as equally rich. That's a big consideration which you have to have. And a measurable level of outcome. There is no measurable level of outcome in a mobile game. There's always more to do. You look at it. Look at any huge mobile game that's going out. There's always more to do. There's always constant updates. There's always more gear to get. There's always more buildings to build. There's always more money to spend. There is no measurable outcome because the goal of the mobile game is to not have an outcome in order to get people to spend more money. As I've said multiple times now, when you involve finances in the game, it starts to not become fun. And I will talk about why people play these in just a second. And participants should be of equal footing. You're not on equal footing if you can buy power. Therefore, there's, when the amount of power you have in the game comes down to how much money you spent and not how much time you spent mastering the mechanics, in my opinion, it doesn't become a game anymore. It becomes a power simulator. And people have become jaded. Enthusiasts have become jaded by mobile games, and it's making them disinterested in playing, because the money aspect of mobile games is creeping into everything else. Diablo Immortal is a prime example of this. If you are a fan of the Diablo series from Blizzard, they released a pay-to-win mobile game where, in order to complete your character, it was calculated that it was going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to fully gear out a character. Can you imagine that? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can you imagine a free game, the limit being hundreds of thousands? More than a house. More than, luxury cars for a game to get something, to achieve something that doesn't exist at the end of the day. You could argue that houses are overpriced, too expensive, the same for cars, whatever. But at the end of the day, even if you spent that money, you would have something tangible, something useful, something arguably of value. When you spend money on a mobile game, you only spend money on the experience. And at the end of that experience, there's nothing. Only the experience you had. And because they're a never-ending pit of money, they are incentivized to never make the experience end. And you could argue that, a long drawn-out experience is good, but you're never going to get the full experience unless you spend extortionate amounts of money. And this is why I was making comparisons to movies and what isn't a game, is because if you view a movie as an experience, you pay a premium to watch a movie, and you have that 2-hour experience, and then it's over. But you might only spend 15, 20 pounds, euros. That's an expensive movie ticket. At least where I am, that's an expensive movie ticket to have that experience. In mobile games, it's hundreds of thousands, and they intentionally make the game frustrating in order to try and trick you into spending more. And this is why, in my opinion, mobile games, they're not games. They're power simulators. They're experiences where, in order to continue the experience at an acceptable pace is set by the developer, by the way, not by you. In order to achieve them at an acceptable pace, you have to spend the money. You have to spend the money. Otherwise, you're going to sit there. You're going to be grinding for all these gems, for all these items, for all these currencies. Some of which will not come. Some of which you cannot achieve without spending money. And if you cannot achieve it without spending money, then there's no fun in that, right? And also, obviously, if you can achieve it in a reasonable amount of time, right? Again, people have done the calculations on some of these mobile games, and when it's worked out that it's going to take you 10 years of daily playing, right, to achieve one high-end building in the game. Or you could spend $50, $100, pounds, whatever, right, for the same outcome. It's essentially gated behind money at that point, I think there is an argument to say that games should be allowed to have microtransactions in them, if they're providing a constant experience. But I don't think it should be in the form of power. I think cosmetics as a microtransactions while they can still be implemented in a way that is derogatory to the experience of the game, using certain preying tactics like fear of missing out, flash sales, anything designed to induce a level of panic in the player that they should buy something. I think that's scummy, and again, because it involves money, it takes away from the experience of the game. If you had a flash sale within the in-game market for in-game currency using in-game gold, which you can farm amounts of, right? That's one thing. But when you're doing it with real money, for cosmetics, for things that don't exist, right? When you're asking people, when you're putting pressure on people to spend money that for nothing, for essentially, remember, it's just pixels at the end of the day, and the developer chose, they're well within their rights, as set out by their terms of services, right? That they can just shut down your account, right? Without a moment's notice and for basically no reason at all. Now, obviously, they're not going to do this for their paying players because they want them to keep spending money, but they could if they wanted to. You've got to remember that control is not in your hands at the end of the day. If you went out and bought a car, the car company, let's say, assuming it's not on a lease, right? If you went out and you paid money for a car, you have that car and it's yours, and essentially, it can't be taken away from you unless you do something illegal with it, So you don't have this element of control over what you have, because the developer is in control, and you pay the developer for the semblance of control. They're trying to get you to spend your money in order for a feeling of control. You spend your money to get the items, right? So you feel like you own that, right? It's a lot of psychological scummy warfare. Now, to come away from the mobile games just for a second, because I'm gonna bounce back and forwards between these few things that I have been doing just to change it up a little bit. Otherwise, I feel it's going to get a little bit too heavy. Is games are potentially staying relevant for far too long, and what I mean by this is games as a live service are a thing, yes, and you could say that this is a good thing or a bad thing, and there's arguments both ways for sure. But games as a service are a thing, and games, in my opinion, some games have been going on for far too long. There's no second iterations of the game, and I know the reasons why they haven't done this, as I've mentioned before. They're just trying to make money on what works, right? It's not about making a fun experience, it's about making money. Just going to list off a couple of games that have been out for a very long time that are still kicking and still making money, and sort of when they came out. So the first one, the most recent one I've got on my list is Fortnite. That game is still going very strong, still seeing regular updates. Initial release date 2017. Came out between 5 and 6 years ago now. Very long time for a game to be alive when you think about it. Imagine playing this thing, imagine watching the same movie for 5 years in a row. Imagine watching the same movie every day for 5 years in a row, right? And that's what some people are effectively doing. Some people are going out and living that same Fortnite experience every single day. And obviously they make slight adjustments to it, right? It's not quite the same as watching the same same movie every day for 5 years. But, it is there. Another popular game that's, you could argue has been relevant for far too long. The next one is Grand Theft Auto 5. Original release date 2013. Yeah, that's right. It's been 10 years since the last Grand Theft Auto was released. What is Rockstar doing? Is it maybe it's too hard to make a Grand Theft Auto game nowadays with all the political stuff that I mentioned going on a little bit earlier. Maybe they don't want to do it. Who knows? Next game I've got on my list, Minecraft. Original 1.0 release date of 2011. Now, if you're an older gamer, you know that Minecraft came out before that. There was a beta and an alpha, so you could play Minecraft much earlier than that. I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe you could play alpha or beta Minecraft as early as 2009. So we're talking about a game that has been out 14 years, right? That's a long time. That's a long time for a game to hang around. You can't think of many games that came out in 2000 that were hanging around in 2014. There are some, but not many. And I will bring a couple of them up. The next game on my list, League of Legends, 2009, I think was the original release date. Again, I think you could play that game in like alpha and beta, but I think the original release date was in 2009. I think that's probably when I started playing it. It was about October 2009. 14 years. You look at this. You look at the map from League of Legends in 2009. Looks a lot different than the one than it does today, but it looks a lot different. Functionally, still the same. A lot of the same characteristics, the same 5v5 map, the same tower placement, the same base, what's the word, floor plans. Not necessarily 100% same. They've made some changes to the bases, they've made changes to the jungle and the river and added a few things, but the blueprint, right, is still there. Not much has changed other than the additions of champions and some new mechanics. The next game I've got on my list, as I mentioned before, Call of Duty 4, 2007. 2007 Call of Duty 4, and I think I think there's only really been two really big changes to the Call of Duty franchise, which was Zombies, which actually got added in, I believe, World at War, which probably came out in 2008 or 2009. I didn't check that one. And the Battle Royale, which came out in the last few years, the Call of Duty Battle Royale, right? Now I'm not a Call of Duty fan as per se. So whether there's been some other big things that they've done in between, I don't think there really has. I think it's really just Warzone at the moment, and the Gulag. The next lowest game on my list is World of Warcraft, which came out in 2004. It's basically, if not a little bit earlier than that, World of Warcraft's been around 20 years, and it's just had another expansion come out, Dragonflight. That's a long time, and the game is built on the same engine. 20 years for the game on the same on basically the same engine, the same foundations. They're at their limit. They have to be at their limit as to what they can do with that game. I think World of Warcraft personally should have come out with World of Warcraft 2 or its equivalent MMO probably 10 years ago. I think a lot of people would say after Wrath of the Lich King is when World of Warcraft 2 should have come out, and definitely by Mists of Pandaria. What happened after Mists of Pandaria was I think inarguably truly the downfall of World of Warcraft. But moving away from World of Warcraft, another MMO which has been out for a very long time, RuneScape. One of RuneScape's original releases, might have been RuneScape 2, I believe it came out around 2001. 2001, that game's been kicking around for 22 years now. If you have an account from all the way back then, there's a good chance that you'll still be able to log in and play. Potentially not with the statistics or whatever stats or whatever gear you had from way back then, but there is a chance that you might be able to log in, and there are people who've been playing the same accounts back then. I did have a couple of accounts back from that game, which were non-email accounts, back when you didn't have to register an email to play the game, you just made a username. And even RuneScape 3 and old school RuneScape, which have sort of been kicking around and getting updated for the last 10 years. Are games remaining relevant for too long? Are we not getting the refreshes? Are we not getting not the updates, but the new experiences, right? Why are we getting version 2.0 of games rather than a second game? If you see what I'm saying, we're not getting upgrades to the game anymore. We're getting updates. what the differences between those, you know, can be argued, but we're not getting the second game, the third game. We're just getting updates, and obviously this is to cut cost as well. It's a lot cheaper to update a game than it is to make a whole new one from scratch, basically. And the next bit, I'm going to go back into a little bit of the psychology and just going to wrap up why games. We're going to try and wrap up why games aren't fun anymore. Is at the end of the day, I think games, especially from large companies, especially from these mobile developers, they're preying on psychology of human minds rather than trying to be fun. This is the difference, in my opinion, of simulating fun and actually creating a fun experience. Now you can argue whether or not these are the same things, and I think I wouldn't think you are wrong for arguing against me here. I just wouldn't agree. Is that designing something to hit the dopamine receptors in your brain and specifically targeting that outcome is different than creating an experience which stands on it does that on its own merits, rather than doing things, rather than having those loot boxes open up, right? Because you go, ooh, loot boxes, right? That's your brain goes, ooh, loot boxes, right? Rather than doing that, creating an experience or a narrative or a situation that exists within the game world that evokes that kind of response. It's not an authentic response to attack someone's dopamine receptors in their brain and try to get them to fire, if you see what I'm saying, right? These are cultivated experiences designed to imitate fun, rather than being actual fun themselves, to try and release dopamine feedback loops, right? This is where they really get people with opening loot boxes and buying power is, oh, you know, if I buy power, I'm having fun, and then you have fun for a little bit, and then it stops becoming fun because, you know, the game wasn't really, it's a mobile game, it's not really fun. You're waiting 20 hours for one of your towers to build, but you can get that progress by swiping your credit card as fast as you can, right? And then you get to have, oh, I've got my new building, I can build it, I can play for another 45 minutes to an hour because I've got that new building now. That's that simulation of fun rather than creating a fun flowing experience. Mobile games having been designed to frustrate you into spending money and preying on the fact that you think, oh, I've spent $50 on this game, I've spent £100, I've spent 80 euros, you know, what's another 10, what's another 5, there's a sale going on, you know, I'd practically be wasting my money if I didn't spend just a little bit more. It's all these things that are taking fun out of the game in order to get you to spend money to simulate fun rather than creating this genuine, authentic experience. There's no real sense of uniqueness, no sense of accomplishment. As I said, it's just an attack on your brain, on your dopamine receptors to try and take advantage of that. And this video has become, I've managed to turn 3 pages into, I think, coming up to an hour, if not over that by now. So that's a whole bunch of reasons as my explanation of why I think games are starting to become unfun, if they're not already unfun, and why I personally go back and I play older games. I play Grand Theft Auto 3, San Andreas, Vice City. You know, I play Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I play Witcher 3. I play the old Witcher games. I play a whole bunch of different games, you know, every couple of years. I cycle through games from my past that I enjoyed when I was younger. And none of these games are loot boxes games, right? That's the strange thing. You know, I have played loot box games, but why am I not going back to the loot box games? If they were fun, why am I not going back to them? I have spent money on a couple of mobile games, never serious money, mind you. I think in terms of loot boxes, in terms of spending, I mean, arguably the most money I've ever spent on microtransactions was League of Legends buying characters and skins. I probably have spent a few £100 playing, paying for that. Other mobile games, I don't think I've spent more than 50. I, I was lucky. Maybe I think about things differently than most people. But I was lucky enough to sort of suss out what was going on, and it was always pay to get more. And I'm pretty cheap. I don't want to pay to get more. I want what I want, which is why I kind of want to talk about this. Is I want what I pay for. I don't want to pay to have to pay more in the future. It's not really. I don't find that fun. I don't think it is fun. So let me talk about how to make games fun again. And these are a few simple things that I think pretty much anybody can do. And it's not really about the games at all, to be honest. It's about what you can do, a lot of it in spite of games. What you can do to make games fun without playing games, almost. The first thing I'm going to say is it comes back to your moral choices about the games. Avoid content and controversy around games you want to play. You want to play a game, don't watch content around it. Don't watch hype around it. Don't watch the reviews. If there's a controversy within the company, you have to make a decision on your morals. But if you know the company is doing bad things, maybe don't read the articles if you really want to play that game. If you really want to play the new Blizzard game that's coming out, the new Bethesda game, the new EA game that's coming out, maybe don't pay attention to those companies and their business practices, right? I'm talking not morals here, strictly in the name of fun. Maybe that's something you need to do. I know I possibly would be having more fun if I wasn't paying attention to that stuff, because I would be worried about playing the games and not about what's going on. Don't watch content to dematerialize the grind in video games. This is a big one. This is huge. How many times are you playing a game and you're grinding out something, you're leveling something? RuneScape is a big one for this. Hundreds of hours on skills in RuneScape sometimes. Some of them are as little as 40, 50 hours, but some of them are as many as several hundred. Now old school RuneScape for sure is not a pay to win game necessarily. Not really in terms of leveling XP. You still have to do the grind. You can't just buy max level like you can in RuneScape 3, for example. But the game is kind of wasting your time. Games that make you grind for hundreds of hours, you could argue even tens of hours on end, especially if they're subscription-based games, they're wasting your time in order to get your money. And you watching content, what I want you to do is the reason why RuneScape 99s, the real reason why 99s in RuneScape, because I think everyone's played RuneScape, so you probably know what I'm talking about. 99s back in the day, getting 99, getting that 13 million experience, right? It took many hours. The reason why people didn't get 99s back in the day was because it was horrendous and it was boring. The reason why people get 99s now is because you can watch YouTube videos, streams, content much more accessibly, and you can tune out from the game. The game, the grind, the progress of doing it is so bad that you need to tune out in order to enjoy it. It's not even enjoying it, you're tuning it out. And you're tuning it out entirely. And because you're doing this, you're not getting the content of the game. And if you have to tune out of the content to get through it, that's just bad content, right? It is not fun, right, sitting and grinding hundreds of hours for XP in order to finally be able to use an item or a boss or something like that. If you had to sit there and stare at the screen while you did it, you would switch off very quickly because it's not very fun and it's not very rewarding. So, if you do play some of these grinding games and you consume content, maybe you need to evaluate your time and the amount of time you're putting in the game. And as I said, I would recommend doing this. Stop watching streams, stop watching content your second monitor on your phone, turn it off and just do the grind. without that content and see how much you enjoy it and how much you want to keep doing it? I'm going to guess that the answer is probably not very much, and you'll probably even have more fun because you'll probably get so bored of that you'll go do something else in the game. I know I certainly would, that's for sure. The next part is going to come across these games is accept that it's okay to let go of games or companies, franchises, series, whatever. Accept that if they do bad things that you don't like, if you don't find the game fun anymore, accept that it's okay to let go and move on. You're not doing yourself any favors by sitting and playing the same game for 5, 10, 15 years. Even if it's short time, even if it's weeks or months, if you're playing the game because you feel like you've invested into it, there's no investments in video games. There's no way to spend money on a video game and get a financial return. It's not an investment, it's an experience. When that experience is no longer fun, it's okay for you to move on. You don't have to sit there and keep playing the game when it's not fun just because you spent money on it. Go away, come back later, don't come back later, do something else that's more worthy of your time. And speaking of being worthy of your time, is don't support, don't spend money on, don't get involved with, if you can avoid it, don't even download, right? Pay to win games. If there is an element of pay to win in a video game, don't support the game at all. Now, if you want to do microtransaction games where you can only buy cosmetics, as I said, I think microtransactions for cosmetics are fine. I'd just rather they weren't done in a predatory way. Sure, go ahead, right? Do those cosmetic microtransactions, right? There's nothing wrong with supporting the developer. What's wrong, in my opinion, is the developer trying to take advantage of the players and get money out of them, rather than creating a product that is worth spending money on, right? That's the comparison. Make a product that is worth spending money on versus a product that tries to trick you into spending money. So don't support pay-to-win games. Just don't download them. If you can buy boosts, if you can buy XP, don't even play the game, right? This is the only way the developers are going to learn is by people not playing. There are other games out there to play, even if they're not the biggest mainstream ones, that don't do this and are more worthy of your time. And speaking of being more worthy of your time, if gaming is your only hobby, this is a big one. If gaming is your only hobby, consider taking up another hobby. If you are getting putting tens of hours of weeks into video games, if all your free time is going into video games and you're not finding it enjoyable, what you need a time off. You need a break. Pick up another hobby, right? Whether it's a sport, whether it's working out, whether it's reading, whether it's stamp collecting. It doesn't really matter what it is, but get yourself a second hobby so you can do something away from gaming. So when you're bored of gaming, when you're not having fun, right, playing games, because it happens to everyone, at some point you're going to not have fun and you're going to want to switch the game off. But where do you go when you switch the game off? I bet a lot of us, right, or I know for me, when I got bored and I want to switch the game off, I switch the game off and I just go on YouTube or Twitch, or I consume some other form of, digital content. Now I'm trying to get better at that. It's January, right? It's not very nice weather. It's hard to go outside. I understand that, right? See what else you can do, right? I try and, jump off and do a few exercises, when I think about it, just to get my mind off of things. Sometimes I jump up, do a few push-ups or something like that, and I get back up and I go, ooh, I've reconfigured my brain here. Let's do something else. Get a second hobby. Give yourself something else to do when games aren't going so well. So you can take that break. So you can go somewhere else. And this is if you're doing it out of habit, you're not doing it out of enjoyment. necessarily, right? You need to break the habit, move away, get that change of mind. And many people, who are hardcore gamers, let's be honest, right? You need to be honest with yourself if you're watching this, and this applies to you. Many people who are gamers, long-time gamers, 40, 50, 60 hours a week into gaming, right? You probably live a fairly unhealthy and sedentary lifestyle, right? You're sitting around in a chair or on a couch or lying in bed, playing, or hunched over your phone, whatever you're doing, looking at the screen, playing games, right? It's not good. I think we have to be how much damage it's doing, right, is difficult to quantify, but sitting at home and playing games is not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health if you do it for long stretches of time without breaks and stuff in between, right? If you are leading an unhealthy lifestyle, and be honest with yourself, if you are spending too much time playing video games, if it's starting to affect you mentally and physically, if you think, I don't feel quite right, if you don't look quite right, then you need to get out and do some physical activity, some sports. You need that sharp shift away, that commitment to making yourself healthier. And then at the end of the day, because you will have done this and had that break, you'll come back and you'll appreciate the games more, because you'll come back in a fresher mindset and you'll come back and enjoy it more. And ultimately, you may be lucky enough that you find something else that you love, and then you can pick up as a second hobby. But something to make you both mentally and physically in a better place, rather than just only playing video games. Because this is probably video games don't necessarily rot your brain and turn you into a devil child, but the long-term effects of playing video games, can be apparent, especially physically. So if you are sacrificing exercise in order to play video games, you might want to sort of change the balance of the scales a bit and give yourself a chance. And probably one of the biggest ones is if you're a solo player in video games. If you dropped in solo in your battle royales, if you play MMOs on your own and stuff like that, especially if you're older, you're getting into your late 20s and you haven't got your friends from school anymore to bail you out, is you gotta socialize, and you gotta try and make friends on the games if you want to promote the longevity, especially if you're multiplayer games, right? If you're playing single player games, you can only play a single player game on your own. But don't be afraid to socialize and try and make friends within different communities. Find people your own age, a couple years older than you, a couple years younger than you, right? It's not as long as you're not being a scumbag, right, or giving away your personal details to other people, you don't have much to lose in terms of trying to make a friend to play games with, right? Just consider that. For some people, they get friends from random lobbies. Sometimes you got to join a Discord community. Sometimes you meet a friend through a friend. Hop on voice chat. Try and be a reasonable person, and you might make a connection that makes it more enjoyable. So those are basically just a few things that I've come up with in order to make games more enjoyable. I think the big one is spending time away from video games, and trying to just change your mindset maybe about what you're doing, and just being aware of what's being done to try and trick you into playing games. Because if you can recognize what's going on, you can avoid it, and if you can avoid pitfalls, right, then you're going to injure yourself less often. So that's all I've got for now. This is probably quite a long video. By the time I stitch together the couple of bits where the cameras jumped out, it's going to look a little bit funny. But yeah, so that's it. Let me know your comments and thoughts below. Remember to like and subscribe. If you made it to the end, congratulations. I don't know why you listened to me talk for this long. Let me know if I missed anything out. If you've got any ideas, if there's anything, I can probably do a whole video on basically any of the questions I've talked on. I could probably 20 minutes of details and more examples, but this was just more of an overview video. So let me know what you think, and yeah, hopefully I'll catch you next time. And I really made this video because the last game I tried to play in order for my Enjoy series, I just wasn't enjoying it, and I was forcing myself to play it, and I was just sort of thinking like, why am I not enjoying this? And I'm not gonna rip on the game. It's not necessarily a bad game in that point of view, but I was just trying to play it and I just couldn't get there, and I said, just why? So this video was as much for me as it was to potentially validate anyone else's opinions or give them new things to think about.